Alan pushed the stack of overdue bills across his desk away from him. He couldn't look at them anymore. What was the point? Sifting through them with good intentions wouldn't make any more money suddenly appear. His farm was in trouble, more than it had ever been. If he couldn't turn a solid profit this season, then it was curtains for the place. And given the withered condition of the corn's current progress, he wasn't holding out much hope. He'd already been in the red the past 3 seasons, but this one was shaping up to be the nail in the coffin. He tried everything he could think of to foster the corn to a healthy yield, but nature was having its way. It had become so bad, and he so desperate, he'd had to resort to some unseemly and regrettable actions. As an organic corn farmer for the past 12 years, he was well aware of the procedures, inspections, and requirements that came with the industry. He was so well versed, and his relationship with the inspectors and certifying agents so firm, that in recent years, inspections had been more of a cursory affair than an affirmation of his growing practices. Wayne Delroy had been out to his farm annually for the past 6 years and conducted the inspections. He and Alan got along well and shared more than a few things in common. Both had grown, post-collegiate daughters, both had been born and raised in Iowa, and both had an unhealthy obsession with the Green Bay Packers. Alan considered him a friend, but for the past 2 growing seasons, Wayne had simply signed off on the inspection without so much as scooping a handful of corn from the yield. His trust in Alan had been solidified, which is why it pained Alan to betray it. Once he recognized that his crop was floundering and likely to yield subpar results for the 4th straight year, he decided to enlist the sworn enemy of organic farmers, ammonium nitrate. Use of the chemical would immediately disqualify him as an organic farmer, and if found out, he would be decertified and likely face substantial fines. But Alan was already backed into a corner with few options. He just needed to pray that his relationship with Wayne remained solid until he could return to his usual farming practice. Something flashed outside his kitchen window and was followed by a powerful thud that rattled his house. Alan sprang to his feet, trotted over to the window, and looked through it. Deep in the cornfield, he saw a faint blue glow. Alan leaned even further forward. Was that a meteor? He rushed from his house, snapping up a flashlight on the way out. He stepped over the young corn stalks, which were only shin-high but should have been considerably higher at this point. He trudged toward the blue light until he stood over it. The size of a plump grapefruit, the spherical object smoked inside a crater roughly 6 feet in diameter. The blue light diminished as he looked at it, the pulsing color likely a result of superheating from entering the atmosphere. Alan scratched his head. He'd never seen a meteor before. If he were being honest, it was a little underwhelming. It just looked like a very hot oblong rock. But then a thought occurred to him. While he may not have much use for a space rock, he wagered there were certain scientific organizations that might. Organizations that would pay handsomely for a fresh specimen. Alan had no earthly idea what the going rate was for a meteor, but he knew it was likely more than 0, which is what he currently had. In the morning, he would do some research and see what he could learn. Scanning the horizon to make sure no one else had seen the meteor and was on their way to investigate, Alan returned to the house. The next morning he prepared his coffee and stared out the kitchen window as the sun rose. It was going to be a gorgeous day, but no sooner had he acknowledged the weather-positive forecast than his brows knitted into a frown. He set his coffee down and pushed through the screen door to step onto the porch. He put his hands on his hips and surveyed the cornfield. What in the world? He muttered to himself. He crossed the yard to the cornfield and walked into it. He wasn't imagining what he was seeing. He knelt and took hold of the nearest stalk. Yesterday such a stalk reached just under his knee, but this morning, crouched as he was, it was almost neck-high. That was nearly a foot of growth in one day. More than that, the stalk's diluted anemic color had greened considerably. Alan stood and passed his eyes over the field. It wasn't an isolated incident. As far as he could see, healthy green corn stalks stood at attention. Alan smiled, but it was laced with confusion. How could this be? How could the corn have made such progress in what amounted to less than 24 hours? He had started using ammonium nitrate nearly 2 weeks ago. The results should have been more gradual, not so abrupt. So what was the cause of the corn's sudden growth spurt? Alan knew the answer instinctively. The meteor. It's the only thing that made sense. Prior to its arrival, the corn struggled. Now, miraculously, it thrived. It didn't take a space scientist to make the connection. In that moment, Alan jettisoned any plans to sell the meteor. Why would he? He may have just discovered the way to save his farm. He walked back to the house with a grin. In all the excitement, he never noticed that his beard was 1 inch longer this morning. The next day, Alan shot awake and raced to the kitchen window. In doing so, his back seized and his knees uncharacteristically groaned from stiffness, the pain from both jolted him fully awake. He hobbled to the window and pulled open the drapes. A smile nearly split his face. As he theorized, the corn had grown considerably taller. Alan estimated the average height to be at chest level, assuming he were standing. Even from his distance, he could see a substantial increase in the number of cornlets. At this rate, not only would he have a full crop, but it would be early and yield far more than usual. That may prove difficult to explain, but he should have worse problems than an abundance of corn to sell. After breakfast, he would tour the fields. For the time being, though, he needed to add some Tylenol to his morning medication ritual. By evening, the corn had grown another 8 inches. Alan had surveyed his property to ensure all the corn was equally affected and was surprised to discover just how far beyond his property's borders the meteor's powers extended. Trees he knew to be saplings just days ago were now over 10 feet tall. Wild blueberry and raspberry bushes popped with nearly ripe fruit. Alan didn't know what special magic resided inside the meteor, but it was clearly potent. He only wished he could benefit from some of that magic. His back hurt terribly, and his fingers had joined his knees in the aching department. He also noticed that vision in his right eye was worse today, and his hearing felt strained. Overall, his state of being seemed more depreciative than it was 48 hours ago. More than that, he just felt plain tired. Alan decided to call it a day, have a light supper, and go to bed. The following morning, he woke to a burning in his chest. It was unlike anything he had experienced. It took every ounce of energy to roll onto his side where he lay until it dissipated and he could catch his breath. The pains from the past couple of days were even more pronounced and accompanied by new ones that attacked his feet and head. The vision in his right eye had diminished considerably, and when he snapped his fingers in front of his left ear, he couldn't hear them. He was deteriorating at an alarming rate. But why? Logic suggested the meteor had something to do with it, but that didn't align with what he was seeing. Everything around him was flourishing, so why wasn't he? Even as he acknowledged this, his thoughts still drifted to the corn. With effort, he climbed from bed and staggered into the kitchen. He caught a glimpse of himself in the bathroom mirror and paused. He looked so gaunt all of a sudden. His face was sunken and his beard had grown down to his chest. Alan sighed and pressed on into the kitchen. He raised a weakened arm to pull back the window curtains. Despite his misery, Alan still managed to smile. The corn stalks were towering. Dark green and sturdy, ears of corn seemed to explode from the stalks. Alan chuckled at his good fortune, but the action threw him into another coughing fit. He winced at the needles lancing his lungs and decided on the spot that the day would be better spent in bed. Supper time came and went, and Alan had never felt so horrible. He hadn't left his bed all day, and the mere thought of food nauseated him, but he needed to check on his crop. Certainly someone had noticed the accelerated growth by now. He needed to come up with a reasonable explanation for such explosive results. Tomorrow, he thought to himself. It could wait until tomorrow. Alan fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, he dragged himself out of bed through sheer force of will. He ignored the splitting headache and the searing pain in his joints, and he was blind in his right eye now, his hearing as if he were listening through water. But he couldn't afford another day in bed. There was too much to do. And based on the last time he saw the cornfield, he suspected, as unbelievable as it sounded to him, that it might actually be ready to harvest. He hobbled through the front door, the pain in his body horrendous. He snatched a broom from the porch and used it as a cane as he plodded across the yard to the cornfield. The stalks were giants, easily peak height. Corn didn't so much grow from them as they did erupt. There was so much, more than Alan could have ever imagined. He fingered the husk of an ear of corn when a lightning bolt of pain in his chest sent him to his knees. He fell over sideways in the dirt, his body spasming in violent surges. His clouded brain didn't understand. Why was he made to suffer when everything else thrived? He thought that when the meteor arrived, it had brought vitality with it, but he knew now that wasn't the case. It wasn't simply life it emitted, it was accelerated life. And as Alan thrashed in the dirt, he found himself oddly grateful for the cool shadows of the stalks that towered over him and protected him from the harsh sun. He watched peripherally as they swayed in a gentle breeze until his eyes slipped closed, and he eventually lay still.